The Natural Selection.
Hello and welcome to the Natural Selection podcast, providing you with a report on some of the best research to come out of and in collaboration with the University of Exeter Centre for Ecology and Conservation. My name is Genevieve Labram.
And I'm Rebecca Hollely. Today we're bringing you a special from Sue Sayer, a key member of the Cornwall Seal Group, and their work on grey seal identification, monitoring and conservation. They work closely with academics such as Brendan Godley and Matthew Witt at the University of Exeter.
We'll be uncovering the problems of ghost gear fishing, both in Cornwall and around the UK, finding out what the experts are doing to reduce the presence and impact of this dangerous drifting fishing equipment, and what you as listeners can do to help grey seals in your area.
Interviewing Sue is Zoe Courchene and Hadleigh.
So Sue, what made you start the Cornwall Seal Group?
Well, I saw seals in the wild and I fell in love with them, and I realised actually there weren't that many people studying seals in the southwest, and so we didn't know very much about them, and it would be really good to kind of fill in the gaps and learn as much as we possibly could. So I started studying one site, and what I needed then to do was engage others to study their site on their local patch, because that way it's sustainable in the long term.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the seals that we have down here in the southwest?
Okay, so the UK has 38% of the world's population of grey seals. They are a globally rare species, and actually there are fewer grey seals in the world than there are African elephants. And whilst we only have 38% of the world's population, that's still around the same number in 2008 as we had red squirrels. So that kind of puts it into perspective a little bit. And then as a creature, they're really amazing. They have some interesting behaviour, ecology and biology. So whilst they're solitary most of their lives, moving around the Celtic Sea, they come together on haul-outs and are very gregarious and interact a lot there. They pup. They have their pup fed just for 3 weeks, which is an incredibly short period of time. And then the mums go one way and the pups go another, and they have to teach themselves to feed and fend for themselves. And then seal society is dominated by seal mums, pregnant females. Nobody messes with a pregnant female. And then we have beach masters, who are the special males who get to mate with the females. But most males are actually non-breeding, so that's, it makes it quite an interesting aspect to their biology.
So the Cornwall Seal Group's been unique in several ways that they look at the grey seal. So what makes you slightly different to some of the other organisations?
I think one of the things that makes us different is the fact that we do photo ID, so we drill information down to an individual seal level. But the other thing that makes us unique is the process by which we study them. So we've been engaging and developing and training citizen scientists to survey seals on their local patch, and we've built up a big network of people, and that's quite different. We're an evidence-based conservation organisation, which of course in this day and age you have to be. We've grown by word of mouth. We never do much PR. We just find people out on the cliff tops or at events and engage them and say, start telling us about the seals that you see. And some of them get extremely addicted and hooked very quickly. Can take over your life, so beware. We've benefited hugely from the scientific capacity at the University of Exeter that people like Brendan and Matt have enabled us to gain. So we then become much better at the science aspect of the work, and gives us credibility and makes our data quite rigorous. But we've been doing this long-term photo ID on individual seals, and that gives you individual life stories, which is really quite amazing. So I can recognise over 1,000 seals by eye. I think my brain's probably had it for everything else, but it's pretty good at seal ID. And that gives you stories about individual interactions between particular seals. So for example, we know that Ghost has had 13 pups in 13 consecutive years on exactly the same beach, and she mates with the same beach master, or at least she has since 2010. So he comes in to mate with her specifically, and she won't mate with anyone else. So the photo ID is awesome, and it gives you that kind of level of detail. whilst it's non-invasive, it's probably one of the most powerful scientific tools to use with grey seals. The trouble is it's extremely time consuming and you have to be doing it for the long term to make it worthwhile.
So what is photo identification, Sue, and how do you go about doing it?
Okay, every seal has a unique fur pattern from which it can be recognised throughout its life. The patterns stay the same, but the contrast within them does change as they age, but nevertheless you can tell an individual seal from its pattern. So, for example, one of the things we've been looking at, we have to study the marine environment holistically because seals are affected by everything in the sea, is we've been looking at ghost fishing gear, lost fishing gear or discarded fishing gear in the sea, because seals get entangled in it. And you can tell how long a seal has been entangled in ghost gear from the photo ID work that we can do, and you can track their life history if they have one after they've become entangled. So from photo ID we know, for example, that Antlers died within a very short period of time from having his last non-entangled sighting to his death, having become entangled in trawl gear in between times. So photo ID gives you that level of information and timelines on individual seals.
So you mentioned ghost gear. Could you tell me a bit more about what it actually is?
Yeah. So ghost gear is lost or discarded net. Could have been lost in a storm, or it could be a buoy, or it could be a fish box. We interpret ghost fishing gear very broadly, although obviously some types of ghost gear pose a much greater threat to marine wildlife than other types. For example, anything that's got a loop in it will potentially seriously entangle an animal, whereas something like a buoy is much more likely to be a toy to a marine animal in the the marine environment.
Okay, so why has ghost gear become a problem, and what survey work have you been doing to address this?
Okay, ghost gear has obviously probably been a problem for quite a long time. We've been researching entangled seals since I first started, actually in 2000 when I saw the very first one. I didn't like what I saw, so I started recording all entangled animals. And in 2012 we wrote a paper about entanglement in grey seals, which was published in the Marine Pollution Bulletin. That was picked up by World Animal Protection, and World Animal Protection are currently doing a global initiative called the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, which we've been commissioned to update all our data analysis to current times. So we've reported on that and written a report for them. We're also being commissioned by them to do ghost gear surveys. So that's something that we do that's a little bit different, is that we do boat surveys and land-based surveys. We don't just do it during the summer months, which is when most researchers do their work. We do it all year round, and we try to do holistic stuff, because if we take a boat out, boats cost a fortune. Therefore you want to be collecting as much data as you possibly can. So we do seals, ghost gear, recreational activities and recreational levels. We do birds, we do all the other marine megafauna that we see as well, and that all gets reported to the relevant organisations. But ghost gear has been a fundamental aspect of what we do alongside disturbance, because they're two key anthropogenic impacts on seals really. And then World Animal Protection have asked us to present our research findings at the San Francisco SMM conference, a Society of Marine Mammalogy conference in December. So we're heading off there, and we've just done the poster from the abstract.
Okay, so what direction would you like to take your work in the future?
Well, there's loads of ways I'd like to work in the future. One of the key things I need to do is try to start writing lots of papers and do lots of publications, because there's no point gathering data unless you do something with it. You need to share it and get the word out there. So publishing papers is a priority for us. To do more photo ID work, when you start doing photo ID work, you start to get information out about movements, but the longer you do it for, you start to understand about those interactions between individual seals that I mentioned with Ghost and her beachmaster. And we also are very keen to start using some photo ID software. However, the stuff that's out there at the minute, we would like to use, but it's quite time consuming, and actually, believe it or not, we can do photo ID using tags and search words in the eye faster actually than the software can do it at the moment. The issue is we take thousands of photos, and it takes a very long time to put thousands of photos into a photo ID software, whereas you can be much more selective when you're doing it manually by eye. So that's a way forward. But we want to discover more things like we've discovered this week. So, for example, Hufflepuff is a little white-coated seal pup that I rescued in 2009 on the north coast at Gwythian. And I had some volunteers come round to visit me from the south coast this week with some video footage of a mum and a pup. And we discovered that the mum had a blue flipper tag. We looked up who the blue flipper tag, it was from the 2009 rescue season, and we suddenly realised that this was Hufflepuff. And now Hufflepuff is called Brush down on the south coast, and she's just had her own white-coated seal pup. And that's the kind of information that you get when you do photo ID through the long term, but you need to be doing it over many years in order to get that magic information back.
Okay, finally, could you give one message that you'd like the listeners to take away from this podcast?
That grey seals are amazing, that they're globally rare, and they're Cornwall's iconic marine species for which we have a UK special responsibility to protect, and actually, frankly, I'm not sure we're doing a great job.
So Sue, how could listeners who are interested in the work you're doing get a little bit more involved?
I think there are 3 ways. The first is to send us information. So if you see a seal out there in the sea anywhere, one seal in the sea with its date and location emailed to me, or if you see ghost gear while you're walking along a beach, then if you see a bit of rope or a pot or a bit of line, then you can email that to me as well with a photo from your phone. My email address is sue@cornwallsealgroup.co.uk. The second way is for you to report information you might be concerned about. So if you see a live seal that you're worried about, you call British Divers Marine Life Rescue, which is 01825 765546, and they will send out a trained medic to go and check and assess the seal. If you see a disturbed seal or a dead seal, then you ring the Cornwall Wildlife Trust Hotline, which is 03452012626. And thirdly, you can support us by donating money. One of our current campaigns is to get £40,000 for boat surveys for the whole of the North Coast for 12 months. And finding more information about all our work really is online. We've just got a fantastic new website that's actually been produced by an ex-student from the Penryn campus, and it's brilliant. The web address is www.cornwallsealgroup.co.uk for more information.
So thank you again to Sue Sayer for doing the interview on grey seals and their challenges, and thank you to Zoe and Alex for interviewing her.
If you have any more questions, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com, UOE Natural Selection, and Twitter, UOE Natural Podcast. And once again, I'm Genevieve.
And I'm Becky, and thank you for listening to the Natural Selection Podcast.